Hello, the objective today is to say I can write a paragraph proof or a flowchart proof, and actually we're just really going to look at a flowchart proof. The basic flowchart proofs are not going to be doing too much different than what we were doing for our previous assignment. If AC is congruent to DF, angle A is congruent to angle D, and AB is congruent to DE, why are these triangles congruent? Hopefully you're saying SAS, SAS, so that's why we know they're congruent. So the point in flowchart proofs is to break these down and to make a proof of this. Now this is a very basic one. The first thing we do is write the first sentence. AC is congruent to DF, and that is just given. So we write the reason underneath each box. The second one, we have angle A is congruent to angle D, and that is given. And our third one, we have angle AB is congruent to angle DE, given. Now once you have those three pieces of information, we can figure something out from it. We can figure out that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF. And the reason that we know that's true is what we said earlier, is side angle side. So to do flowchart proofs, they're very similar to the train of thought that you were on previously. We're just writing down all of the steps in our process. Now, typically, you need three things in order to prove that triangles are congruent. So typically it's going to look like this. You have three things, and you're proving triangles are congruent. Now, once you have things are congruent, sometimes you can find other pieces of information from them. So let's work our way through this. We know angle AC is congruent to DF, and angle A is congruent to angle D, and AB is congruent to DE. It's the same thing that we had before. Now we want to prove that angle B is congruent to angle E. So we're going to take the same information. I wonder if I can just copy and paste it in here. It's probably not going to fit perfectly. I guarantee it won't fit perfectly. But let's see how well we can fit it in here. We're going to slide it in. Say it like that. Alright. So we have this piece of information here, this piece of information here, and this piece of information here. Now, why do we know, if we know these triangles are congruent, why do we know angle B and angle E are going to be congruent? Well, this one's in the middle, and this one's in the middle, and we know when we're proving congruence, if they're lined up, that's going to work. So we say angle B is congruent to angle E in the last step. And our reasoning is this thing up here. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Now, we're going to do some more doing this, but we should understand the basic structure. We need three things to prove triangles are congruent. Once we prove that the triangles are congruent, there are 6 different congruencies within here that we can get because of it. Now let's go to this next one. Now we're going to add even more to the charts. TS bisects MA. Now in these 3 blanks, what we need is saying something is congruent. So we go off to the left here, and we say TS bisects MA. And that's our given piece of information. Now based on that, what can I show? Well, if TS bisects MA, it cuts that right in half. That's saying that MS is going to be congruent to AS. Now let's pause for a second and try to figure out the other things that we know. It says MT is congruent to AT, but that's only two pieces of information. We need a third piece of information to prove that the triangles are congruent. Hopefully you're saying that TS is in both triangles, and that works. And that now we can prove that the triangles are congruent. So let's put the other two reasons here. Now, the reason why we can say that these two are congruent is it's the definition of bisect. Now the other things we can say MT is congruent to AT, and that information is given. And then TS is congruent to TS, and that could either be reflexive or same segment, or same line. Segment's better, or reflexive. We learned the reflexive property a couple chapters ago, but if you wrote same segment, I would be fine with that as well. Now, once we have those things, we can prove that these triangles are congruent. So, which triangles are they? Well, it's TSM is congruent to TSA. And the reason why they're congruent is side, side, side. Now, once we have that, is this angle T the same on both of them, MTS and ATS or STA? And you can see that T is the first two letter in both of those, so we know that MTS is congruent to triangle ATS, and that's by corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. All right, it takes a while to get these. If you're still a little confused, that's fine. Let's just keep plugging away, and hopefully they'll make more sense. So let's keep this party going. Let's do some more proofs. This one says M is the midpoint of AB and PQ. So if M is the midpoint of AB and PQ, that's the only thing we're given. Let's try to see if there's anything else in there. So if M is the midpoint of AB, we know those two have to be congruent. So I can draw an arrow saying that AM has to be congruent to MB, and that's the definition of midpoint. Now, also M is the midpoint of PQ, so those two have to be congruent. So we say PM has to be congruent with MQ. And the reason, again, is the definition of midpoint. Now we still only have two pieces of information. The third piece of information is the vertical angles in there. So I could say angle PMA is congruent to angle BMQ, and that's because those are vertical angles. Once we have that, we know by side angle side, this triangle is congruent to that triangle, and would say triangle PMA is congruent to triangle P lines up with the 2 and the no, so that would be Q. M is in the middle, so that has to be in the middle, and then B. So are AP and BQ congruent? AP and BQ? Are they congruent? Yep. And that's by corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. All right. This is one last one, and then we're all done for the day with flowchart proofs. So we want to prove that MN and TO. Well, we know MO is congruent to TN, because that's just given. They're both 3.3. Since these lines are parallel, didn't draw that right on the line, this is our transversal. Can you see that these two lines would be alternate interior angles? So when I remove that, that's going to be angle TNO is congruent to MNO. And the reason by that is that's alternate interior angles. And then the last one, NO is in both of them, so NO is congruent to NO. We can either say reflexive or same segment. Once you have those, we have to make sure we line these up correctly. NOM. Now this one's kind of tough for people. This one is going to match up with O. O, this one here, is going to match up with N. And then T is going to match up with M. Now, if I know this angle, this side, and these sides, this is side angle side. Now we have to prove that MN, first and last, is the same as TO, which is first and last, and that's true. So we can say MN is congruent to TO by CPCTC. Hopefully that helped you get through this. Good luck finishing your homework.